Welcome back. It's Catherine with SafeTechie.com. And now that we have your Clean Router plugged in and actually have devices attaching to it, so you have your Wi-Fi and you've connected a computer or your phone, tablet, things like that, we're actually going to go in and change the settings that they have for what type of monitoring and blocking the Clean Router will do. So to do that, you can do two things. First, you can either just bookmark this website right here, so local.cleanrouter.com/the login, or if you don't bookmark that or you can't remember where to go, you can also just come in here and go to cleanrouter.com. And when you're at the cleanrouter.com site, you'll see My Settings at the top. And once you click My Settings, it will actually bring you to that page before. And as we go throughout this video and future videos at times, you'll see this black bar, something similar to this, like in the password box or blurred area of the screen. Nothing's wrong with your computer or the device you're on. I'm just blocking out a part of the screen for privacy reasons. The thing to remember with Clean Router is that this is specific to when you're at home. So if you're out and about and you go to this site, you can't just put in your password and see what your Clean Router has gone to or what activity has taken place. This is actually when you're at home, you have to be connected to your Clean Router and then go to this site and type in your password. And the password here, just as a reminder, is that admin password that you set up in the last video. So go ahead and put in your password. And then once you've logged in, you'll see all of the settings for Clean Router. It can be a little bit overwhelming at first, so I'm just going to go through each of these links on the left-hand side. I'll explain what each of the different links do and then which ones are actually important to set up. And there are default settings that Clean Router has, and so you can just leave your default settings the way they are, or you can make them a little bit stricter or less strict depending on your individual family. So the user information is exactly like it sounds. This is just the information associated with your account. So the email address that Clean Router has on file, your phone number, and how they would contact you if they have any issues. The admin password and the bypass password. So the admin password refers to the password to get into this web page right here where you actually change settings. You can view what activity has taken place on the router or what websites people have gone to and things like that. The bypass password is actually the password that lets people get into a site that's being blocked. So maybe, for example, you have a site about breastfeeding and you're trying to get to look at the site and it's blocking you. You would use the bypass password to put it in on that site, the block page, and it would let you go to visit that site. So if you might have older children or guests that are visiting and you want them to have a bypass password so they can see the sites that they are going to, but you don't necessarily want them to have access to the admin portal, to this admin site where they can change settings and things like that. Subscription has to do with the monthly or yearly subscription cost to using Clean Router. So you would just come in here and you can update your credit card information just by clicking click here to update your subscription. All right, and then let's move into the filter information. So when we talk about filter, it means talking about your Clean Router. So you have this Clean Router and it's filtering the websites that are gone to. And so here you can just turn it on or off. So do you want the Clean Router filtering, so blocking, monitoring the activity that takes place? Then you would just turn either that off if you wanted to temporarily turn it off, or you could keep it on, which is what I would recommend doing most of the time, or else it's not working. The sites blocked and sites visited we'll come back to in the next video. There's no initial settings that you need to change there. The emailed report is just a place to get information on your Clean Router, so what sites were visited, what sites were bypassed, without logging into this account. So again, we'll discuss that in the next video as well. And then let's move on to the list. So when you're initially setting up your Clean Router for the first time, I don't recommend changing the list very much, just for your initial settings. We're going to change what your settings will be in the next section, the filter configuration. So the lists are more as you are using the Clean Router. So as you're coming across maybe a site that you thought should have been blocked, or maybe it's your child plays video games a ton, and you're just, you know what, you need a break from this for a week and you want to block that specific website, that game site. Then you would come in here and you would add that to the blacklist. So that means regardless of what's on the site, maybe it's a good site, you don't want the site to be visited, then you can add individual sites to be blocked. And so what I found is a lot of times parents block things as they go. So they'll see sites that come up that they want to block. And then the other big thing would be like whitelist, which are sites that are being blocked, which you think, no, they're okay. So with these list pages, they're a little bit more advanced settings in the sense that if you just get your clean router and you just want to plug it in, you're good to go with the default settings. But if you want to make some additional settings, that's what you would do with these lists and the filter configuration. So moving on, the keyword list are specific terms. So by default, again, I wouldn't put anything in here, but in the future, if there are keywords that are being searched if they are searched, you want to block a page. If that word shows up anywhere on the page, you want it blocked, you would put that in here and then hit save. And then this TLD blacklist, you don't have to know what TLD is per se with just looking at this. TLD just means top level domain. That doesn't matter. What it just basically means is you're going to block any website that ends in dot whatever you put here. So, for example, a typical website most commonly used would be a .com website. So, www.safetechie.com. Well, there's all sorts of endings for websites. You could have on this list the .vodka or .country. All of these other types of websites currently are being blocked. And so if you don't want to block all of these, you can just hit X and save it, or you can add additional ones. So for some reason you want to block all .net sites, then you would just come in here and add .net, add it, and hit save. So moving to filter configuration, this is probably the most important section when it comes to filtering with the clean router. This is where all your main settings will come from for what is actually blocked and what is monitored. And so these clean router has set them all up to have your default settings, and that will give you a pretty safe range for what should be blocked or not, but you can change those depending on, again, your family situation. So I'll go through these. With categories, it's what categories of sites should be blocked based on what's the content of the website you're going to. And so by default, if you change your settings and you forget what should be on, the default ones are marked with a star. And so this right here, the kind of most dominant issue that parents seem to have with kids online is pornographic website at a younger age, at too young of an age. And so you can come in here and say, okay, I'm going to block all inappropriate ads. I'm going to block all different types of pornographic websites for anyone that's connected to the clean router. If you have really young kids and you're concerned, you could also block anything related to the drugs, gambling, guns, and so forth. And then again, with any changes that you make to any of these links on the left-hand side, you do have to come down and hit save after every time you change on each site, on each individual page. So the search engine settings, I wouldn't change initially. Maybe if you're continuing to have issues with search engines and maybe your child is getting around things, then you can either contact us at Safe Techie and we can help you. But this will change the way your search engine works, and it could change some of the functionality of it. But just to help you understand what it is, it adds extra security to the search. So it's in doing encrypting search through Google, encrypting just making it a little bit more secure. But then with YouTube, what that's saying is YouTube has this safe search functionality that Google has created where if you're a young kid and you're searching videos, it pretty much blocks any content that's like 13 and older. So any videos related to a kind of older audience. And so by turning this on, it would force all the YouTube searches to be safe searches. And then the search engine blacklist is if you turn this on, you can actually completely blacklist a search engine. So you can say, I do not want my child going to google.com and add it. So you just add google.com, bing.com, yahoo.com, any search engine that you just want completely blacklisted, then you could add that. Again, I wouldn't initially mess with these functions unless you're concerned. You could talk to either Safe Techie or Clean Router. And the reason I say that is because there are quite a few search engines out there, and Google and some of the more reputable search engines are known for that you can find, unfortunately, inappropriate content, but you can also find really good content. And so if you're not careful, if you block all the well-known, reputable search engines and your child goes out and finds kind of a crummy backsite search engine, then they end up actually finding sometimes worse things. Just something to keep in mind. So if you have a younger child and you're not concerned about that, you just don't want them doing searches, then by all means come in here. You can block google.com, Yahoo, Bing, so forth, like I mentioned. Filter level is my probably favorite functionality of Clean Router. It is super easy just to come in and say, okay, who is attached to your Clean Router and how strict do you want the blocking to be? So if you have young children, only young kids are attached to the Clean Router, obviously make it super strict, and that will pretty much take care of these categories up in the other filter configuration. It'll take care of those categories for you. So it's going to block like anything that they're going to that's remotely adult related. On the other hand, with Relaxed, this might be good for if you have older children and you say, you know what, I don't want to have to bypass anything. I'm trying to teach them accountability. I want them to just be able to search what they want to search. Then, you could come in here. My recommendation would be set it to Relaxed and turn off all the categories, but everything that they go to will still show under sites visited. So maybe it doesn't show what sites are blocked because nothing's now blocked because you've turned off all the settings, but it will track still all the sites that are visited. So you could come in and say, okay, you know what? I'm not going to block any of your sites, but I am monitoring them. It gives you a little bit of accountability for what choices you're making and what sites you're going to. All right, and moving on to exclude from filter. So this is another feature that I really like with Clean Router, and it gives you a lot of flexibility in your home. So let's say you have your Clean Router and you want it to be the only router in your home. You just buy the Clean Router Pro, you set it up, you attach all of your wireless devices to it. So you have your computers, your TVs, and so forth. But let's say you have, like mom and dad don't want to have everything filtered. And again, filtered referring to Clean Router's blocking and monitoring all the websites going to. Well, what you can do is come in here and say, type in the specific MAC address for the device that you do not want to be filtered, and you can add it here. And again, without getting too technical, the MAC address is just a number that's associated with your computer or with your iPhone, iPad, and so forth. And so there's two different ways that would easily allow you to get your MAC address. So if you're on your computer and you're thinking, I just want to get the MAC address from my iPhone and from my iPad, and I don't want to filter them anymore. One way is to come down here and you'll see where it says DHCP clients. And don't worry about what that means. Just click on that and you'll see all the different devices that are currently attached to your Clean Router. And so you would just go out and find, for example, I have Catherine's iPhone right here. I'm blanking out my MAC address. You can't see it, but you would just highlight and you can right click on that and copy that MAC address. And then when you come back up to your exclude from filter, then you would just paste it there and then click add, and then you can hit save. So that's one way. You just add the MAC address from, again, that was the DHCP clients. An easier way might be if you just go to your individual device. So you go on your iPhone or you go on your computer and you log into this administration page for a Clean Router, you can just click this computer and this will actually just go find your MAC address, and then you can click add and then you can hit save. Remember, always hit save when you make changes to the individual pages. And if you ever change your mind in the future, you actually do want it filtered, just hit X and then you can hit save again. Another nice function of Clean Router is the time restriction. So this is just turning off the ability to use the internet for individual devices. So you would just hit add restriction. And again, you can come in here, you do this by MAC address. And so like we talked about in the last section with exclude from filter, you would go find the MAC address by either going to DHCP clients, or you can go to the individual device that you have, iPhone, computer, whatever it may be, hit add restriction and then hit this computer. And if you're on the device that you want to set up time restrictions for, it will find the MAC address for you. And then once you have the MAC address, you can set up your time restrictions. And it's pretty straightforward. Leave the default ports. If you don't know what that means, don't mess with that. And then what instead we can do is just change your time settings. And so as you can see the legend, if you have it as blue, it means you're going to block that time. So I can go through and say, okay, on school nights from 9 at night until 5 in the morning, I don't want them to have access to the internet. And so that means that this MAC address, so the computer I'm on, will not have access to the internet wherever there are blue squares. And then I would just hit save and it would add that information. So you also need to put in a name here. So let's say I just put in, you can put in your child's name and then hit save, and then you'll see the information that they have, and then you can come back later and edit it or just delete it. So again, that's time restrictions refers to you're going to turn off the internet and the access to the internet for that individual device. And then lastly, you had ad-driven sites. This is, again, something that I wouldn't necessarily make changes to right off the bat, but if you have a specific website that you're just noticing tons of problems with advertising, you can come in here and add a specific web address. So a web address would be, www.soandso.com. So you would come in here and add the web address, and it would block any of the ads for 90 minutes. It would add it for a specific period of time. And so you can just block sites for that specific website. So these last two sections, the list and the filter configurations, are really what the bulk section for setting up your monitoring and blocking on the Clean router. This last section is a little bit more technical. Everything is set up for you when you get it for what the default should be. So unless you are a tech person and kind of know a little bit about networking, I wouldn't mess with any of these settings. The DHCP clients is probably the only thing that you would visit a little bit more frequently than the other items. And so let me go through each of these. With the interfaces, again, this is a little bit more techy. It just shows you all the different types of network connections. Your DHCP clients, ignoring the technical name, this is just what devices are attached to your Clean router. So you would see all the different devices that are currently connected to the router and are using the internet. And again, the main things here, your MAC address just refers to the actual computer or device. It's the hardware, so to speak, of that device. It's associated with your hardware on that computer. The IP address is more of a network thing. So it's how computers talk to each other. They use numbers, and they use a number to identify a specific computer on your network or on your router. And then the name is something that we actually use. So that's probably what you're going to care about the most when you come in here and say, okay, well, what devices are on my Clean router? Who's using my internet? Then you would come in here and probably just ignore the MAC address and IP address and just look at the names. And it's really good to look at this if you think someone is stealing your internet. Your neighbors maybe broke your password onto your Clean router and are using your internet for free. This is a great way to come in and you can see, okay, are there computers or mobile devices that are using my internet that I don't recognize? And then the diagnostic, again, I wouldn't mess with these things. This is something that's a little bit more techy that people can test to make sure that your router's working the way it should. So the last section down here is this network section. You probably will not use this very frequently, the section in general. Most of them are a little bit more heavy on the technical side. The wireless configuration is this one that you might use. And what that is when you first got your Clean router, we went through and we set up what was the name of your home network called and what was the password. And so those are when you want internet on a device, you go to your Wi-Fi settings and you say, okay, connect what available networks are there, and you'll be able to see, okay, I can connect to my home network, and then you enter in your password, right? So this right here is where you change those settings. So you can change what your network is called. Once you set that, you probably won't change it, but you might change your password. And so you can also go in here and you can change, I would keep this at WPA2, you only have one option most likely, and then you can change the password. So if you find out your neighbor knows your password, then you might want to come in here and change it, and it would change the Wi-Fi password for your Clean router, which means any phone, TV, computer, any device that's connecting to the Wi-Fi would have to put in this new password. So again, once you set this up, you probably will rarely go into the network setting, but if you ever needed to change your password, this is where you would do that. So that brings us to the end of all the settings that you can do in Clean Router. I really hope you're not overwhelmed. I know that was a lot. Again, just to kind of do an overview, this first top section, you won't really deal with very often. It's where all your user information is, setting a password to access this website right here, setting a password to bypass any sites that are blocked. Your filtering is what we're going to do in this next video. We're going to talk about how do you actually look at the videos that have, or excuse me, the websites that have been blocked or the websites that have been visited. The two sections that you're going to use most frequently when you want to change your settings would be the list and the filter configuration. And list, again, refer to what if you have specific websites that should be blocked or specific websites that should not be blocked. And the filters is more of, as your children get older, maybe you want to be a little bit less strict. You're still monitoring them, but maybe you don't want to block quite a bit as much. And then the router info and the network are really more technical. You probably won't go in there very often except from maybe DHCP clients, which ignoring the more technical name really just means this is what devices are attached to your Clean Router, who's using your internet. So I'm going to go into the next video and we're going to talk specifically about this filter information and how do you view what sites are being visited in the long term.